The Green Bay Packers are not going to be a more talented team in 2026, but they can be a better, more complete team.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn your college basketball energy into an even bigger potential win with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. I want to talk about offensive line continuity today. We'll dig into that a little bit at the top. And I want to talk about free agency and why it exists, because it exists for moments like this. We'll get there. Let's start with a question that Zach Cruz from Packers Wire posed on social media the other day, and that was, is this Packers team going to be more talented than the previous iteration of the Packers? And my gut instinct was to say yes. And I realized what I was arguing was not that they would be more talented, but that the talented players would, that I believed would move into the roles of the departing players, would carry the day and make them ultimately a better team. I think the 2026 team will be better than the 2025 team, but it will not be because they are more talented. You are not going to replace Rasheed Walker with someone as good as Rasheed Walker. Last year, Jordan Morgan was a backup. This year, he's going to be the starter. He might end up being better than Rasheed Walker. I think, in fact, the Packers hope he will be better than Rasheed Walker. But in 2025, Rasheed Walker was also on the team. In 2026, you don't have him. And the odds of you finding a player as good as Rasheed Walker in, let's say, on day 3 of the draft, slim to none. I understand they found Rasheed Walker on day 3 of the draft, but he was not Rasheed Walker right away. You can't count on a rookie for that type of impact. Now, the free agents, I think losing Kobe Wood and adding Javon Hargrave is very clearly a talent upgrade. I think losing Nate Hobbs and adding Benjamin St-Juste is, maybe we can argue about a pure talent upgrade. I think Nate Hobbs doing what he does best is better than what St-Juste does best. But as a boundary corner for the Packers, I think St-Juste is in a better position, and he's a core special teams player. So the Packers net out as a potentially better team because Benjamin St-Juste does not have someone ahead of him playing the role he's going to play. He's going to be the third boundary corner, pushed to be the second boundary corner in a way that I don't think Nate Hobbs was going to do this year. Clearly, the Packers agreed. They added a legit NFL returner in Sky Moore. Clearly better than what they were using last year with Romeo Doubs. Now, that's a minor increase in talent, but it is objectively an increase in talent. And I think Zaire Franklin is an upgrade over Quay Walker. And so that's a 1-for-1 in terms of player out, player in. So there's a talent increase there. Sky Moore is a talent increase. I think Benjamin St-Juste for Nate Hobbs, that's a talent increase. But even if you think Baron Sorrell and Lucas Van Ness and Colin Oliver and Brenton Cox playing a bigger role in the Packers this year makes them better than having Rashawn Gary take those snaps. And I think that is a totally reasonable position to hold. Rashawn Gary was on the team last year with those guys. He's talented. And so talent, no, it's not better. Could the team be better without Rashawn Gary? Yeah, absolutely it could be. Now, I hate to bag on this point, but it would also really help if Micah Parsons, Zach Tom, Tucker Kraft, if those guys are healthy. Like, having Tucker Kraft healthy is better for this team. So the 2026 team could be better merely by being healthier. They're not any more talented. Tucker Kraft is not going to be more talented now than he was before. In fact, if anything, he's likely to be less talented physically as he works back from a torn ACL. Same with Micah Parsons. Same with Zach Tom. But having 85% of Micah Parsons, 85% of Zach Tom, 85% of Tucker Kraft is better than 0%. So I think the Packers have lost some players that will be difficult to replace in terms of raw talent values. Like if we're thinking about Madden ratings, Rasheed Walker going out, even if he's just a 75, they're unlikely to find a 75 on day 3 of the draft, a 75 in 2026. Could they get Jordan Morgan playing at a 76, a 78, an 80? Sure they could. But he was on the team last year. And so Romeo Doubs out the door. If you wanted to make the case that Matthew Golden getting those reps makes them better and more clearly defined roles for everybody and a more clearly defined pecking order for everybody and a cleaner outside receiver rotation, and that would have an impact on the passing offense, I would say I'm willing to listen to that. A year 2 jump from Savion Williams or Matthew Golden. Like Matthew Golden could be better in year 2 than Romeo Doubs was last year, or could be more impactful to this offense. But Matthew Golden was on the team last year. So was Romeo Doubs, and Romeo Doubs is not on the team this year. So again, if we're stacking Madden ratings, for example, I'm just using that as a proxy, just as a metaphor to understand like total aggregate talent. It's not going to be as good. But I expect the team to be better. And I don't think that that's unrealistic at all. One of the reasons why you move on from Rashawn Gary is not just because he's too expensive. It's because you can't countenance the effort. Not from a captain. You can't countenance being out of shape, not being in shape enough to play 75% of snaps. That's absurd. And so there are plenty of reasonable arguments to be made, like, okay, Matthew Golden takes a step forward and Sean Ryan. Like, I want to get to this offensive line continuity point. Knowing who your starting 5 is going into the season. Having the cornerback room more or less set. The DB room, I mean, you know Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney are your safeties. We didn't know that going into last season. Like, we kind of thought that would be the case in Javon Bullard. The Packers didn't. The Packers thought Javon Bullard would beat out Evan Williams in camps. They wanted to sign Nate Hobbs to play the slot. And that's why I thought, okay, even if that's true, find ways to put all 4 of those guys on the field at one time. And the Packers said, well, we'd actually just rather not pay the bonus. And we think we can get a corner who can actually help the team on a down-to-down basis. And if he can't, fine, he's a core special teams player. And that's the other piece of this. And I made this point earlier in the week. The special teams are likely going to be better, not just because Nick Niemann's going to be healthy, but they re-signed Nick Niemann. They brought back Christian Welch. They signed Sky Moore. They signed St. Juste. Those guys are here to play special teams. That's not an assurance that the special teams is going to be better, but you also replace the coach. I think it is a pretty straightforward argument to make that they are going to be better on special teams. They are more talented on special teams than they were. Not more talented overall, but more talented on special teams. That doesn't always lead to better, but it at least puts you in better position to be better. The Packers are banking on being better, and they still have to get better. Now, I do think Javon Hargrave is straight up better than anyone they played next to Devontae Wyatt last year. Devontae Wyatt, by the way, another guy who was not healthy. Now, he's had injury issues across his career, but So you've upgraded the defensive tackle room. I think you can make the case for what the Packers need. They've upgraded the cornerback room. They've upgraded the linebacker room. But we're talking about starters, not depth, not total talent. So can the Packers be better? Yes. I think right now their starting lineup is better than it was last year. In total. The team might not be as talented. But also, you have to build in this injury issue. Like Tucker Kraft being on the team, Zach Tom being on the team, Micah Parsons being on the team versus being on the field. And that offensive line piece, I don't want to gloss over it. It is vital as we move into 2026. Let's talk about it next. College basketball is nonstop conference championship games. I love the conference tournaments. I love the conference tournaments. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups, conference championship weekend. The first weekend of the tournament is the most fun you can have in sports. Like, it is unbelievable. Mixed spreads, totals, player props, match how you see the slate playing out. Pick all the stars. Put the best players in college basketball into a parlay and have some fun. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now just with more upside. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. There have been a lot of conversations in the group chat lately, talking free agency, talking free agent options, trade options out there. Free agency is here and so are we. Get 1 month free of the Everydayer Club with code free agency. No spaces now through March 15th, which means you are running out of time to get that free first month. Go ad free and keep this conversation going on Discord. Join the club, lockedonpackers.supercasts.com, or click the link in the show notes to sign up. One of the cases you can make for why this Packers team will be better is more talented players are going to be starting. And I think you might be able to make the case that there is more talent in this starting lineup this year than last year. If we include special teams, like Sky Moore is just an enormous upgrade as a returner. I think Zaire Franklin is a meaningful upgrade over Quay Walker. Javon Hargrave is a meaningful upgrade over Carl Brooks. And Jordan Morgan, for what we saw from Rasheed Walker last year, can be a meaningful upgrade over Rasheed Walker. Sean Ryan can be a meaningful upgrade over Sean Ryan. Anthony Belton can be a meaningful upgrade over Anthony Belton. Aaron Banks can be a meaningful upgrade over Aaron Banks. In the case of Aaron Banks, it's just be healthy. And in the case of Jordan Morgan, he gets to focus on one position. Just go win the left tackle job. Brian Gutekunst said in his, I believe it was the combine press conference, but it might have been the postmortem. Doesn't matter. He said on the record, he believes Jordan Morgan won that job in camp. And if that's not a signal, I don't know what is. Like, he's telling the team, this is your starting left tackle. Doesn't mean that he can't fill in a pinch at guard if they need him to, because you have a capable tackle who can come in. Darian Kennard, you can just slot him in there. But you can also play Darian Kennard at guard. I would rather do that, frankly. Remember, Anthony Belton did not cross-train at guard last year. A big mistake by the Packers. They cross-trained everybody, but for some reason did not cross-train Anthony Belton. And I was someone saying, let him play tackle. Maybe he can be the right tackle of the future. You slide Zach Tom across the line. He's already built like a left tackle in terms of skills and body and all that stuff. Maybe they do that. I think Jordan Morgan is going to get that shot. But giving Anthony Belton the full offseason to understand this is your role at guard. The spatial awareness, the blocking schemes, the calls, the checks, the pass-offs. The spatial awareness, the instincts of, okay, this guy's coming in, which means that guy's going out, which means I got to be ready for a stunt here. Understanding by alignment, those little nuances. Oh, he's shaded a little bit this way, he's probably running a game. I got to be ready for that TE stunt. There's so much value in that. Like Anthony Belton, by Pro Football Focus numbers and by some of the charting numbers, was one of the worst guards in the NFL last year as a pass protector. I don't think that holds up, frankly, but the Packers love his tenacity in the run game, love the physicality, love the power that he brings. Banks, Ryan, and Belton, that is a group of MFers in the middle. Those are big, nasty dudes. Put them together, you can have a run game in a way that you didn't last year, maybe. And so now you can build some continuity at a position where continuity is everything. I would rather have a slightly less talent with continuity than slightly more talent without it. And I think this group, I think Jordan Morgan is a more talented offensive lineman in terms of physical skills, tools, than Rasheed Walker was. Doesn't mean he's going to be a better player, but is more talented. Anthony Belton has the same amount of talent as Anthony Belton, but with a year of experience and a full offseason and a full training camp, full offseason activities, OTAs, and all that stuff, you would expect him to make some improvements in year 2. Having Zach Tom healthy next to him, continuity. When you have a really good player next to you, it makes your job a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about that guy losing and you having to help. You don't have to worry about him being out of position because he's always going to be in position. Now, you do have to think about the depth. The depth is not there right now. Jacob Monk does not look like an NFL player. We don't have any idea what John Williams is supposed to be, the 7th round pick from Cincinnati last year, who's an intriguing guy. Maybe he can be the swing interior offensive lineman, the swing guard. Let Darian Kennard be the swing tackle, but he's someone we've never seen play NFL football. We didn't even get to see him in the preseason, which means the Packers didn't get to see him in the preseason. He hasn't even practiced that much as an NFL player. They need to add probably a developmental tackle. You know, they're Caleb Jones, they're Yosh Nijman. And they need to bring in another interior offensive lineman. They need more depth on this team. But simply having 5 guys, like it's not quite the old quarterback thing where if you have 2, you don't have 1. But I think last year they got a little lost in the sauce when it comes to, well, let's just let everybody compete for everything all the time. Well, how about you just let Jordan Morgan compete at left tackle and let him be a left tackle? How about you just let Anthony Belton be a right tackle and compete at right tackle? Okay, Zach Tom won that job. Now he's your swing tackle. And you can put the veteran, Darian Kennard, who was a veteran, let him play right guard. Because he can theoretically do both. They mostly like him at tackle, which is fine. I think you're going to see Darian Kennard in some of those big packages, those 6 offensive lineman looks. They trust him to do that. They threw a screen to him in a playoff game. One of the wildest, dumbest, craziest, luckiest things that's happened to the Packers, and they still lost that game. It is unfathomable. It is beyond fathom. It is unable to be fathomed. It's preposterous. But I do think it is reasonable to think this group going into the offseason, given that everyone knows their role. Like this is a similar conversation that we had last year when we talked about the receivers and how it would be really great for the Packers to have a better defined pecking order in the passing game. Doesn't mean that you can't spread the ball around. But understand, okay, Christian Watson is this. Jaden Reed is this. But injuries rob them of some of that. And Matthew Golden, I think we don't want to talk about some of the issues he had last year in terms of being in the right place, running the right routes. But in one of the biggest drives of the season, when the Packers were trying to salt the game away, they got in position for Brandon McManus to make a field goal. They should have scored on that drive. 3rd and 16. Jordan Love changes the play, gives Matthew Golden a route adjustment. He runs an out route. They complete the pass. They convert the 3rd and 16 because Matthew Golden. So the talent on this team is clear, but the pecking order wasn't. And I really truly believe that having clearly defined roles in anything you do is important, even if there's an overlap. Like in a household, even if parents are sharing the burdens of being parents, of managing a house, of the cooking and the cleaning and the parenting and the everything and the bill paying, all that stuff. Even if they are doing all those things, usually it falls on one person to handle a subset of things most of the time and another person to handle a subset of things most of the time. I like to cook. I cook in our house. I am the cook. I have a clearly defined role as the chef de cuisine at restaurant Bukowski. It is helpful to everyone to know that when they sit down to eat, that they know, first of all, they know what I'm good at. They know what they like that I make. And they can make requests. That makes it easier for me. I don't have to menu plan the same sort of way. Like there's so much value in understanding your role, even if there is a shared responsibility. I don't have to do that. But I do, and I like to. It's my responsibility. So I think that there is a benefit in any job, in any walk of life, in any system, in any communal endeavor, to have defined roles. And I think having defined roles for this offensive line is really going to be a benefit to the players on that offensive line. And I think reasonable people can disagree. Like Joe Thomas has been on this show multiple times saying, I think the best thing for young offensive linemen, learn how to play guard, learn how to play tackle, throw them into the deep end and see who can sink and who can swim. But Jeff Jagosinski, our former OC in Green Bay, who's on our squad show, he's like, I hate it. Let these guys learn how to play. Let them learn how to play left tackle. It's kind of easy for Joe Thomas to say, right? He's Joe Thomas. He was the left tackle off the rip and forever. And he's a Hall of Famer. So what works for him may not work for everybody. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I just think this team having defined roles, now that they are chasing a Super Bowl, like it's different 2023, even 2024, to be sort of finding it with a young team. Well, now it's go time. Now it's Super Bowl time. And having defined roles is a big deal for this team. Now, one of the ways that this Packers team has gone about free agency is fixing mistakes. That is what free agency is for. And we'll talk about it next. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that really says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to website data. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 in sponsored job credits to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Free agency is about fixing mistakes. You go into the draft, and especially if you're a team like the Packers, over the years, they have been a draft and develop team. If you look back at the free agent moves Brian Gutekunst has made, historically, they have been when they have tried to address an issue in the draft and failed. You make the Zaire Franklin trade because Quay Walker was not the player you hoped he would be. The Packers right up until the moment he left the building, were saying he was someone that they thought highly of. Brian Gutekunst last offseason was saying, we want to get an extension done with Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker. They are core members of the team until they weren't. And in some ways, Devontae Wyatt not being the player they thought he would be is what leads you to have to go out and get Javon Hargrave. And Lucas Van Ness not developing faster is a reason you have to go out and get Micah Parsons. Well, you had to put Kenny Clark in that trade. And it's a trade you make 300 times out of 300. But it cost you. And it cost you something because of a draft mistake. Now, if Lucas Van Ness goes out and is really good this year, I think there are going to be people that say, well, if it takes until year 4, it's a mistake. Ultimately, I think the goal is to fill out your roster with the most good players as you possibly can. If he goes out and he plays at a high level, if he goes out and gets 8 sacks this year and is a stout run defender and is, one of the better edge players in the NFC, then you're going to say, okay, that's you made a good pick in terms of adding talent to your roster. Injuries held him back twice. Really, every season he's dealt with some sort of injury. And so that's part of what has to happen in free agency. Nate Hobbs, one of the worst signings in Brian Gutekunst's tenure, probably the single worst move, frankly, of the Brian Gutekunst era. And you have to replace him with Benjamin St-Juste. You make the Amari Rodgers draft pick. Then you wander in the wilderness with the return game. You drafted Savion Williams thinking he could return kicks for you. That didn't go great. You draft Jaden Reed outside of your normal size parameters, thinking, well, he can also return punts. That didn't work out. So now you have to go out and you have to sign Sky Moore. You take some shots on day 3 on defensive tackles, Carl Brooks and Kobe Wooden. Carl Brooks looked like a guy as a rookie who was turning into a really good player. And he just never quite could. And part of the reason is Kenny Clark, they wanted to play him more at 3-tech, which means you got to play other guys at nose tackle. Carl Brooks was a defensive end at Bowling Green. He's like 285, 290 pounds. They had Kobe Wooden playing at like 275, 280, playing nose. You just can't do that. You can't live that way in the NFL. You have to go out and sign Javon Hargrave. Like that's what free agency is for. You tried to do something in the draft. You tried to build your roster through the draft. You're always trying to build your roster through the draft. And it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. And when it doesn't work, that's when you have to dip into free agency. And by the way, signing your own players is signing. And I think that this crew of free agents is a great example. Like Sean Ryan stayed versatile, had to play multiple spots, and ultimately played well enough that the Packers went, we think there's something here, we're going to extend him. That's a hit. A third-round player who gets a second contract to be a starter is a hit. But Quay Walker was not good enough. He left. Romeo Doubs. If Romeo Doubs was worth a contract extension, if he was worth the Alec Pierce deal, the Packers, by the way, I don't think Alec Pierce is worth the Alec Pierce deal. That's a conversation for another day. But they would have paid him. He wasn't, so they didn't. So this is what free agency is for. And the Packers are lucky. It is indicative of a healthy roster that what they're doing is a marginal move here, a marginal move there, because this team is that close to being a Super Bowl contender. Be healthy, improve on the margins, and play your best football in December and January, and hopefully February. That's the plan. That's the deal. Now we'll see if they can put that plan into action, make it a reality. All right, back next week. We have more coming this week, though, too, right? We've got our Friday Live, Friday News Dump, and then we've got our Sunday OT with Brandon Snide coming for you to talk about all kinds of fun stuff in the offseason. I think the big stuff in free agency is coming to a close. in terms of what the Packers are doing. I do think there's something else coming, though. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a trade. I know there's been some burblings out there. I wouldn't put too much stock into those. But I think there's one or two more moves. The size of those moves is hard to say. But then it becomes about, okay, how many comp picks did you get? What does Rasheed Walker sign for? It sounds like the holdup right now with Rasheed Walker is the Trent Williams situation. Like if a team that would be in bidding on Rasheed Walker can get Trent Williams, maybe they'd rather have Trent Williams. This is part of the conversation here, and this is something that we'll talk about certainly in the coming days and weeks as the Packers try and reshape this roster to get them into Super Bowl contention. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, so you always get the latest episodes. Subscribe on YouTube. Come watch us on YouTube. Maybe a lot of people are watching on YouTube these days, especially a younger crowd. The Gen Zers, they like a YouTube. Hell yeah, we're on video. I dress kind of nice. I look okay. You can see me. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Packers ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and more. Head to lockedonpackers.supercasts.com or click the link in show notes to join. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NFL YouTube channel. On audio, make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. We're going to be talking to those boys as we get closer to the draft. Keith Sanchez and Damian Parsons, two of the best in the business. We'll have those guys on plenty as we get closer to the draft to give you the best information, to make you the best Packer fan you can be, to always stay locked on Packers.